I'm happy with that answer. Has the Office of the Ombudsman also requested the assistance of the AMLAC in relation to other cases pending with the Ombudsman, particularly those involving ill-gotten wealth-related graft cases?
Well, as far as the case against the Chief Justice is concerned, if I recall it correctly, that is the first that has come through me during my incumbency.
Opo.
I did not go over the records of pending cases if they involved unexplained wealth and if the assistance of the AMLAC was solicited.
Opo. Thank you, Madam Ombudsman. In fact, that would be my next question. How many times has AMLAC assistance been requested, even under your watch?
How's that? I'm sorry.
Under your watch, ma'am,
yes.
How many times has AMLAC assistance been requested?
I don't recall if the assistance respecting the fertilizer scam case involved the assistance of the AMLAC. If I, on my incumbency, was sought, but I remember that the assistance of the AMLAC was sought. Because you see, the fertilizer scam cases came in trickles. They are by the hundreds, and so even when I was not yet there, the cases were filed, and when I'm already in the office, the cases keep coming.
Maybe this last question is redundant, but how many times has the AMLAC turned over bank account data to the Ombudsman since the creation of the AMLAC in 2001?
I did not get the statistics on that matter, Your Honor.
Opo. My point really, Madam Ombudsman, ma'am, is for us, since this is work in progress, in terms of jurisprudence, even in terms of impeachment processes, that this should not be considered a template for future.
Definitely not, Your Honor. It is only when there are leads, there are strong leads, and after an initial evaluation, we determine that further help can be sourced from other agencies in order for us to determine whether we would go ahead with the conduct of a further investigation, that we would seek the help of the AMLAC. Because I know that the AMLAC is usually stingy in giving records of transactions, financial transactions.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Senator Pia Cayetano wishes to be recognized.
The lady senator from Taguig.
Meron pa tatlo eh. May we change it to Senator Lacson, Mr. President? We have 3 more reservations, Senator Pia Cayetano, Escudero, Estrada.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's only because my name was mentioned by Senator Cayetano and my computation. So, yes, indeed, I was taking notes when the Ombudsman was testifying, particularly on withdrawals from December 12 to 22. And as per her testimony, the total amount withdrawn on those dates was $3,388,323.14. I Google checked or Google searched the exchange rate in December of 2011. It was at 43 pesos and 64 centavos to $1. So, at any given time, this was the question of Senator Cayetano, at a given time, particularly or specifically as of December 22 of 2011, the Chief Justice had a total amount of 147,866,400 pesos. And
Floating around.
more or less, give or take, Mr. President. So around 147,866,400 pesos in all in dollar accounts. We're not talking of peso accounts here, Mr. President. So where he put that money, I do not know. The Ombudsman doesn't know. Only he knows. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next.
Senator Pia Cayetano now, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I only have 2 points to raise. My first point I address to the body. I think I would like to perhaps discuss this in caucus. I'd like to raise the point as to how we treat the evidence presented by Her Honor the Ombudsman, and in connection with the PowerPoint presentation, given that the Ombudsman herself has cited Section 21 of the Ombudsman Law, Section 22 of the Ombudsman Law, which states her power to investigate for the purpose of filing a verified complaint for impeachment if warranted. So, given the huge values involved in the presentation, I think we need to discuss how this will be treated, because if in fact it is the investigation was done in connection with a future verified complaint, then how are we as senator judges supposed to appreciate that in this impeachment court? I will not offer a suggestion for now, but I would like the Majority Floor Leader to note that perhaps we should, well, I would like this to be discussed in caucus. And then the second point,
as I said, the situation is this. The Ombudsman did not come here voluntarily to testify. She was presented as a witness by one of the sides involved in this proceeding. And if I remember correctly, my rules of procedure and rules of evidence and the principles of trial, he who produces a witness must be bound by the testimony of the witness, whether favorable or adverse to him. So that's the situation.
His Honor's...
Even an illegally sourced evidence presented by one of the parties and not objected to is admissible.
His Honor's position is noted, and for that matter, though, I'd like to hear the views of my other colleagues in caucus on Monday. And then I just go to my second point, and I address this to the Ombudsman. Again, Her Honor mentioned her investigatory powers under Section 15 and 22 of the Ombudsman Law. And I would like to seek her opinion on how we reconcile this with a long line of cases by the Supreme Court interpreting Section 6 of Article 8 of the Constitution. Section 6 states that the Supreme Court shall have administrative supervision over all courts and the personnel thereof. And in connection with that constitutional provision, there are a line of cases, and I will quickly read a few provisions from these cases. In Judge Fuentes versus the Office of the Ombudsman, the Supreme Court said that it is the Supreme Court that is tasked to oversee the judges and court personnel and take the proper administrative actions against them if they commit any violations of the laws of the land. It further states in another case, Judge Cauibis versus Ombudsman, the Ombudsman cannot dictate to and bind the court to its findings that a case before it does or does not have the administrative implication. To do so is to deprive the court of the exercise of its administrative prerogatives. Madam Ombudsman, I fully support the powers of the Ombudsman. In fact, I was one who raised my concerns and my frustrations over the previous Ombudsman's failure to investigate many offenses of impeachable officials. But I would just like to seek Her Honor's position on this, because, again, we are groundbreaking, we are paving the way for, we are setting precedents for future impeachment proceedings, and has Her Honor had the opportunity to look at this so that we can, this will not be an issue today or in the future with respect to investigations of justices themselves? Because technically, let me just finish my statement, I'm sorry. If I look at the cases carefully, it would appear that the Ombudsman would have to refer these cases to the Supreme Court, and for the Supreme Court to determine or give the go signal for the clearance. So it seems to be a circuitous way of going about the investigation, but that seems to be the inclination of the Supreme Court, including a 2011 case, if I'm not mistaken, which involved retired Supreme Court justices.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
In the case you mentioned, Your Honor, in the cases you mentioned, those are administrative in nature.
Yes.
So the Supreme Court said that if the complaint, even if it were clothed with the nature of a criminal case, but it appears to be administrative in nature, then the Supreme Court, being
Having administrative supervision
administrative
would prevail.
supervision and control over officials and employees of the Supreme Court, then it should properly take cognizance thereof. Now, respecting your mention of an 2011 case, a recent case rather,
Yeah.
involving, I think you're referring to then retired and still retired Chief Justice Davide and Alice Austria Martinez.
Actually, I have not read the case itself. It
Yes,
was just given to me as
this case was filed by Oliver Lozano. He was assailing their decision in particular land case, and the Supreme Court said that the ultimate intention of the complainant was to modify or set aside their decision, and they cannot do that. So eventually, of course, the ombudsman dismissed the case, and while the dismissal rendered the case before the Supreme Court moot and academic, the Supreme Court took time to lecture on the ombudsman why it should not have taken jurisdiction on the case in the first place, because it was sought to question the way the justices rendered their decision.
I understand. So, in other words, Her Honor is basically confirming that in that case, what the Supreme Court laid down was the guidelines, and basically that was if the case is filed in connection with pending cases, it cannot be used to overturn those decisions. But we make a distinction. I assume that what Her Honor is saying, we make a distinction that if a case is an impeachment case, and for example, in this particular case, which Her Honor would pursue following reports on impeachable offenses, then that would not fall under the Supreme Court's administrative function.
It would not.
Is that what Her Honor is saying?
Yes, it would
Okay.
not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Jingo Estrada?
Gentleman from San Juan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Magandang hapon po, Ginang Ombudsman.
Magandang hapon po rin, Ginoong Senador.
Alam kong pagod na ho kayo at 4 na oras na ho kayo nandito. Ngunit iikli ako na po ang aking pagtatanong. Isang tanong lang naman actually. Unang-una ko po nais ko pong ipamahagi sa inyo na ako po hangang-hanga sa inyo at malaki po ang aking respeto sa inyo sapagkat dati ho kayong maestrado ng kataas-taasang hukuman ng ating bansa. Ngunit paminsan-minsan ay